I'm Heather Bustos. I'm the partner of Bustos Law Group. We're an FDA compliance firm, so we help companies in the food, supplement, cosmetic, OTC drug, and medical device spaces kind of navigate the FDA regulatory landscape. Going to be talking about creating product claims and from the perspective of an FDA compliance attorney. So why are claims important? So as a brand owner, you're usually going to focus on this left side of the screen, the consumer perspective. That's usually where you want to be drawn to first. When it comes to marketing, you want those claims to build trust in your brand, boost your business growth, solve the customer's problems, create your amazing marketing content. What tends to be left out and not considered as often is the FDA's perspective. And it's obviously really important. So first of all, your claims can actually affect your product classification. So the category in which your product sits can actually be modified based on the claims. In addition, your claims will explain the product's intended use. So the FDA will try to figure out what is this product meant to do, and they'll be looking at your claims to figure that out. It's also important to note that it applies to labeling, not just your packaging, your external packaging, but also your brochures, marketing materials, social media content, websites. All of that is considered an extension of labeling according to FDA, and thus it's regulated by them. And so any claims on any of those types of materials are going to be regulated as well. And then finally, substantiation. It is important that you have studies, you have data to back up the claims that you're making. So these are all, like I said, important considerations from the FDA perspective. Really, in a best case scenario, you're going to have a harmony between these two. You're going to have the consumer perspective aligning really well with the FDA perspective. That's what I do. If that FDA perspective is not considered, things like recalls, import alerts, warning letters. If you don't know what those are, I hope you never find out. Those are the things you never want to hear about as a business. And so that's, like I said, the really important consideration. So we're going to be doing some case studies on some companies who essentially these two sides were not in harmony, as I like to say. So starting off with the first case study, is in the cosmetics industry. So the FDA defines a cosmetic as something that is meant to beautify, to enhance the appearance. It's really meant to be something kind of superficial. And so that definition is really important as we get into this case study. So the first company I wanted to look at was Anne Marie Gianni Skincare. They are a large cosmetics brand. They do a lot of all natural products. Anne Marie and her husband were really big on YouTube and then started the skincare company. And unfortunately, they did receive a warning letter from the FDA, and it was based on claims. They thought they were making claims that were cosmetic claims. The FDA felt they were making drug claims. So here's some examples of some of the claims that FDA cited, and you can read through some of those. Really, we want to talk about how did the claims affect the FDA's perspective on the intended use of the product. So again, the FDA considered that product a drug simply based on the claims. And a drug is defined by the FDA as a product that is intended to mitigate, prevent, cure a disease or condition. So I separated this out into the disease or condition. Acne is considered a drug claim. Rosacea, you can see up at the top, hyperpigmentation. All of those are disease or condition claims. I also included lesser known, but also a little bit tricky structure function claims. So any claims, especially in the cosmetic space, as I said, it needs to be kind of a superficial type claim. Structure function claims are claims that the ingredients in the product will affect the structure or function of the body. So in this case, boosts cell regeneration, builds collagen. Those are examples of structure function claims that they also made. So on the next slide, we're talking about how did they fix it, right? Here's the hero part of the story. So they modified their claims That's always really a good way to handle these situations, is to modify them, delete, what's maybe not important, kind of go back to the drawing board, revisit that definition of cosmetics that I alluded to in the beginning. So here's an example of a prior claim: soothes and reduces redness and irritation. They then updated it to lessens the appearance of occasional redness. If anyone's seen a cosmetics commercial, you've heard lessens the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. What they're doing there is they're really strategizing on how do we make this a cosmetic claim. So you'll see a lot of the appearance of, and if you're wondering, that's really what that comes from. Another one was hyperpigmentation. That's considered a condition. And so they changed it to help with the appearance of an uneven skin tone. And so really the reason why I wanted to share this story and why I think it's more of a hero story is because not only did they modify their claims, but they went a step beyond that. They actually created a company-wide claim protocol, which I've been getting a lot of requests for this from clients because of the fact that we're using, a lot of companies are starting to use influencers. They have sales teams that need to be on the same page when it comes to claims, what can be done. Their claim protocol is actually, you can Google it and it pulls up. And it's wonderful because it gives an outline of what FDA allows or doesn't allow. It's kind of a crash course in claims in the beginning, and then they have this huge index of all different drug claims and how you can modify them to cosmetic claims. To me, that like I said, they took a really holistic approach to compliance, and obviously the FDA agreed with them, and because they issued what's called a closeout letter. So warning letters are made public. The FDA basically tells everyone on the internet, all the violations that you have, and the coveted thing that all these companies want is a closeout letter that the FDA is essentially, again, on their website, publicly stating that all the violations that were listed are now resolved. And Anne-Marie Gianni, in a very rare situation, were able to achieve that. And so obviously they satisfied FDA. And again, it's very rare in a claim situation to get a closeout letter. So for me, that's really what makes them the hero in this story. Jumping into the next category, the next case study under the dietary supplement category. So FDA defines dietary supplements as a product that is taken by mouth or ingested and meant to supplement the diet. So the company I wanted to look at here was Zarbee's Naturals. If you're not familiar with them, they make these supplement syrups. They're aimed at children, and essentially I think all of them are made with honey or agave as the base. And so Zarbee's, in their first iteration of the product, were issued a warning letter because of the claims they made. Again, not in harmony, right? They thought they were a supplement. The FDA thought they were a drug. So some of the claims that the FDA cited were proven congestion relief, soothes sore throats, immune boosting. This fourth bullet may surprise you, but the FDA actually cited the fact that the company liked a review made by a customer. So the customer in the review stated colds and congestions were cleared up in 2 days. Another one said, this gave allergy relief to my husband. And because the company liked those comments, the FDA actually cited those as claims made by the company. So that's important to understand kind of the reach. This is a more recent thing that you're seeing with FDA, but they will go after your reviews and all of that. So it's really important to have that under control. So how did the claims affect the FDA's perspective on intended use? Again, I broke these out into the disease or conditions, cold, congestion, allergies, sore throat. Those are all considered drug claims. And then structure function claim is immune boosting. So on the next slide, we'll talk about what did they do to fix it. So what's the common way of responding to these warning letters? You usually don't want to argue with FDA very much. You want to try to just go back to the drawing board, especially if you are wrong. In this case, they were wrong. for trying to sell a supplement for cold and cough and congestion associated with colds. So they went back and modified their claims to meet the FDA's definition. Here's an example of a prior claim: proven congestion relief, soothes sore throats, and then the updated claim. And this is why I consider this a hero story. Generally speaking, the strategy for moving from that drug space into the supplement space is to take your drug claims and try to craft them into supplement claims. And it's really hard to make a supplement claim when the purpose of your product is for colds and sore throats and coughs. So what they did was really clever. They essentially changed the claim to some benign conditions. So it says soothe coughs associated with dry throat, hoarseness, and irritants. So in this case, they really went back to the drawing board with their legal team and found a way to craft the claims. A good rule of thumb with supplements is when you're crafting your claims, you want to think about a claim that is aimed at a healthy person trying to make them healthier versus an unhealthy person trying to make them healthier. So that's kind of the idea here, is these are all conditions that a healthy person could have. They're not associated with a disease or condition. So I thought it was really clever. Another example is immune boosting, and they changed it to supporting the immune system. You'll see that a lot: maintains the immune system, supports. Those are all very common in the supplement space. And again, this is a hero story because they were very clever. I actually had a client who wanted to enter the US market with a very similar product, a supplement that was made for coughs and colds. And that's how I even found out about the Zarbi story. And we used a very similar strategy in that. So to me, that's where the hero part comes in. And they also were issued a closeout letter by FDA because they did such a great job. So the final case study that I wanted to go into in the food space was Kind Bars. If you haven't heard about Kind Bars, they are essentially a health bar. They're made from generally like nuts and fruit. Like I said, I would consider them a health bar, but the FDA disagreed. So they, in 2015, got a warning letter where the claim healthy was really the issue. The FDA's perspective was that they did not meet the definition of healthy, and thus they could not claim it on their bar. How in the world can Kind Bars not say that they're healthy? It makes no sense. And that's what Kind Bars, essentially thought to themselves. And they took it a step further. Instead of just agreeing to remove the claim, they actually filed a citizen's petition to change the definition of healthy. And the FDA actually allowed them to use the term. That was on a technicality. At the time, they didn't change the definition, but they acknowledged there was a need for changes. This was a 20-year-old definition at the time. Now, update to a couple of weeks ago when I was actually making this slide, the FDA finally released a proposed rule that will change the definition of healthy, and it will now include products like Kind Bars. And something Kind argued in this case is, you can say that a sugar-free pudding is healthy according to FDA guidelines, but a fresh piece of salmon wouldn't meet the definition because the level of saturated fat would be too high. So all of this is, we're trying to update the agency scientifically. Kind Bars has not stopped there. They're actually trying to change the way calories are counted as well. Excuse me, that standard is from 1925. So definitely some updates needed, but this is definitely a hero story. Kind right now is all over the internet being heralded as a champion for industry because they're trying to change the agency. The question is really, how quickly can they do that? And obviously it took many years for this to change. So we'll talk about some warning letter avoidance strategies. I don't want to leave you with nothing on that front, because it's really important to think of this from a proactive standpoint. If you're already making claims, that's fine. You can always go back to the drawing board and see how you can modify The goal is how do we proactively avoid these situations, because again, they're very costly. So when it comes to product claims, here are some tips that I came up with just based on what I've seen with clients and in the industries. So one is make sure you're reviewing the product category definitions. I listed a couple of those. It's really important that you understand those definitions. Two, understand FDA labeling definitions. So again, that's not just your outer packaging. The FDA regulates any marketing materials that you put out, social media, websites, like you saw, likes on reviews and comments. Those are all regulated as well. Number three, craft your claims to meet the definition. So make sure that you're keeping in mind that definition as you're making your claims. It really is sometimes just wordsmithing and figuring out creative ways to kind of say what you want without crossing that line. Four is ensure consistent messaging. As I spoke about that protocol with Anne-Marie Cosmetics, they wanted to make sure that there was consistent messaging down the line, including for influencers who are speaking on your behalf. FDA actually issued a warning letter to Kim Kardashian not too long ago as an influencer because she was making claims on behalf of a drug company. So again, it's really important that that messaging is consistent because the FDA's reach is now extending. They're coming out of the Stone Ages and understanding that they need to regulate the internet too, and all of that comes with that. Number five is substantiate claims. Again, that's Suzanne's realm, and I'm not going to get into that in depth, but it's really important that you do have substantiation, you have things to back it up. That's regulated as well by the FTC, making sure you have studies. So those are some of the warning letter avoidance strategies.